I've never been to Alaska, but today I'm going to show you how to make a 5-inch version of Alaska Homestead quilt block. Welcome to Epida Studio. My name is Elizabeth and I help you make beautiful things with quilting, pojagi, and embroidery. So today I'm going to show you how to make the Alaska Homestead quilt block. And even if you've never seen this block before, this might look kind of familiar to you because this is a pretty close cousin to the traditional churn quilt block. You can see that has half square triangles in the corner. Now this is a traditional 12-inch version of churn but the 5-inch version would look like this. And when we see these two together, we can clearly see the relation. It's made with all the same pieces, sizes, and shapes, but it's just a different colored layout. So this is another fun example of how just changing some of the fabrics will totally change the block and make it look totally different. So Alaska Homestead is a 3-color block, so you will need a light, a dark, and a feature or contrasting fabric. So I'm using this white fabric, I'm using the solid brown fabric, and this pink print for the feature. So choose your 3 fabrics and then we'll get started making the block. So to make this block, you are going to need 2 3-inch squares of dark fabric, 2 3-inch squares of the light fabric, 4 1.5-inch squares of the light fabric, and 5 1.5-inch squares of the feature or contrasting fabric. And to begin, we're going to start with our 3-inch squares of fabric, and these pieces are bigger than we've been using in a lot of our 5-inch blocks. But we're going to use these to make half square triangles. And we're going to use the most popular method for making half square triangles. So I know for a lot of these blocks, we've been using the easiest ever method, but these ones are a little bit bigger. And so the most popular method is perfect for that. So for the most popular method, we're going to draw a diagonal line on the back of our light fabrics. And then we'll put it right sides together with a dark fabric. And then we're going to stitch a 1/4 inch away from that line on either side. Then when we stitched on both sides, we will cut the piece right on that line. And then we can open that up and press it. And each of these pairs is going to make 2 half square triangles because we're making 2 at a time. So we will have 4 in total. So if you are not familiar with this method, I do have another full video that has a lot of details. So you can click the link for that to see more detailed. But this is a really common way to make half square triangles. So I call it the most popular method. So once these half square triangles are made, we're going to need to trim those down, and it'll just need a little bit of trimming, but we're going to trim it so that it is exactly 2.5 inches square. And then when those are done, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our 4 1.5-inch white squares and join each one of these to a feature fabric. And so we're going to have one little 1.5-inch square left over, but we're going to join 4 pairs. So we're going to end up with 4 half square triangles, 2.5 inches square, and 4 pairs like this, and these should be 1.5 by 2.5 inches. So once all our pieces are done, we're ready to put the block together. Now this block, in the very middle, it has that feature color square that was left over, and then at north, south, east, and west, we're going to put these pairs, and we're putting it so the light fabric is towards the center. And then our half square triangles will go in the corners. And we're putting them with the dark fabric facing in toward the middle and our light color on the outside. So that is what our block is going to look like, and we'll see this is a 9 patch. It's 3 across and 3 down. So we will join it in just the way we would do those. We're going to join the pieces together into rows and then join the rows together. Now for pressing in this block, it's a little bit of a personal choice, but this is the way I'm going to press it. For these seams and these rows, I'm going to press them back towards the dark fabric. Now normally, if there's a diagonal line, then I try to avoid pressing that back onto itself. But in this case, because this has a horizontal line as well, there's two lines, I'm going to choose to press this line back onto itself so that this seam can stay flat and it's not pressed back onto itself. Because if a horizontal seam is pressed back onto itself, that'll have more of a lump than if a diagonal seam is pressed back on itself. But that is totally personal choice. If you want to press it a different way, that's fine. But also pressing these back this way will mean that it's pressed under the dark fabric. And that means this middle row, it can also be pressed to the dark fabric, which is this middle fabric. And because our seams are pressed in opposite directions, that means they will nest together nicely when we're going to join the rows into the block. So that is my personal choice for how I'm going to press these rows. So you can press them whichever way you feel like you want to press them, but I do encourage you to use some of the principles of thoughtful pressing to think through, why am I pressing it this way, instead of just trying to find an arbitrary rule that you can always follow. Because if you're thinking through why you're pressing something a certain way, then that will help you to make the best decisions for your blocks. So let's join the pieces into rows and then join the rows together. So here's the finished block. This block is now 5.5 inches, so it'll be 5 inches in your finished project. And I think this is a really fun variation of a churn dash block. To see lots more quilting tutorials as well as patterns and inspiration, check out my website, epidastudio.com.